Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by Paste and Linode. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you? Are you covered in snow? Are you alive? Did you make it out of the storm?
I'm covered with icicles because it hasn't snowed, but it got down to, I think, minus 22 this morning, like minus 30-ish Celsius. Really,
My God.
really very cold. I haven't left the house in 2 days, feeling a little stir crazy. And I knew when we talked last week that as cold as it was then, it was going to be nothing like it has been the last couple of days. But we're on the cusp of coming out of this, so hopefully we'll get a bit of a little thaw, and I will go out into the world and see the sunshine again for once.
That sounds so poetic.
I know. Anyway.
Well, I hope that at least you had time to play video games and try apps and do some email. You seem to be doing a lot of email every day.
Yeah, I get. I have close out my day with a little email in front of the TV this week. I guess you've noticed because you've been on a couple of those. But
that is also poetic.
It's not very poetic. It's pretty sad. But you know what? I want to do a little follow-up from our last episode because on Monday, before it got super cold here, it snowed really hard. And I was tromping around in the snow in downtown Chicago when the behind-the-scenes iPad Pro video came out on YouTube. Apple did exactly what we were hoping they would do, and we did that episode last week. We put out the episode in the morning. Before lunchtime, I think, my time at least, there was a behind-the-scenes video, and I think I'm going to declare, John was right, because it was LumaFusion.
Is that a thing now? John was right? Okay.
I think you suggested it, and I said, yes, you're right. But I think I'm going to just say I was right, because it was LumaFusion and a whole bunch of other apps, but the filming was done with LumaFusion, and then they had some animation apps, and they used Filmic Pro, and it was just nice to see not only how it was done, but also the apps that were used.
Yeah, it was a very cool video, and I especially liked that the video about videos made on the iPad Pro was itself shot and edited on an iPad Pro. So it's iPad Pros all the way down, essentially.
Yeah, I thought it was great when Ryan put that in the story that he had on the site, because it was just really well done. Of course, you have to do it that way, right? I mean, if you don't, you immediately get criticized for it, I would think. But no, it was really extremely well done, and I was glad to see that, and hope to see a little bit more vocal shout-outs to the apps and the ads going forward.
Yeah, I want to see more of these videos from Apple. I hope that this is the start of a trend. Like, I thought it was so fascinating to see these pros, whether they are Apple's own creative team or an agency, that was not specified.
Right.
But to see these creative pros at work and like actually using the iPad and LumaFusion and what's it called, Motion Pro or something like that, the Motion app that they use for animations. That was so fascinating, and so like this is the real work that happens on iPad Pro, and it was very well done. Of course, very good short film. So yeah, I'm all in favor for more of this, Apple, please.
Yeah, I saw a few people complain on Twitter that, they're using tens of thousands of dollars of rigging and equipment to do those shots. And you could tell looking at that was pretty high-end movie-making equipment that was surrounding those iPads. That, it was an iPad Pro filming an iPad Pro filming an iPad Pro. But you know what? I'm convinced you could make that with just some pretty standard photography equipment. In any event, it was neat to see how it was done. And I think that even without tens of thousands of dollars of rigging, you could do something pretty close to that if you have the skills. I mean, really at the end of the day, equipment rarely makes up for lack of skill. You really have to have the eye and the technical chops to know how to put that kind of thing together, beyond just having good camera equipment and stands and clamps and whatever else was used.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll do a full-on MacStories film all done on the iPad Pro, and you will be in charge of constructing the entire rig, John, someday.
Yeah. If I'm a director, do I get one of those little clapper things that make the noise? Do I get to do that?
Sure. You will, if that makes you happy, you will get that.
It will. Now I'm in on the project.
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
All right, Federico. So today we're going to do something that I've been meaning to do for a while. And the reason I thought of it this week as a topic was because of one of the apps that I'm going to cover. I want to do a utility app grab bag, just handy apps that you and I use. And we'll probably revisit this and do a follow-up one. But I just want to take a handful that we each use day in and day out, or maybe even just occasionally, but that are really useful in occasional projects, and highlight those for people.
I like these types of episodes when we get to talk about apps. So let's do it. What's your first pick?
All right. Well, my first one is one that I wrote about at the beginning of the week, beginning of last week, which is AirBuddy, which is a brand new Mac utility from Guilherme Rambo. And he just dropped this on, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. And what it does is it works just like when you open your AirPods next to an iOS device and you get that card that kind of slides up from the bottom and it shows you that spinning graphic of your AirPods in the case and how much charge is there and that sort of thing. It does that on the Mac. Instead of sliding up from the bottom of an iPhone, it slides down from the top, and it can be on the left, middle, or right-hand side of your screen, and it looks just like it. I mean, it shows you the charge. It also works with Beats headphones that have the W1 chip in them. So there are a couple models with that, because I tried it with my Beats X. And then with one click, you can connect your AirPods or Beats to your Mac, which doesn't sound remarkable, but it can be really hard sometimes. I know not everybody. I've heard from people on Twitter who have told me, I don't understand the big deal. I have no problems attaching my AirPods.
Yeah, it's not like that.
Congratulations, because it's always a problem when I try to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so this works flawlessly. I mean, it slides down, you just click, and you're good to go. I mean, it's an incredibly handy utility. It's not a menu bar app, so you're not cluttering up your menu bar with yet another little utility. It's not even going to show in the dock unless you actually double click on it in the Finder to do the settings. It's just a helper process that sits in the background and waits for you to open up your AirPods near your Mac. Now, your Mac has to be running Mojave, and it has to be one that supports Bluetooth LE. Now, that goes back kind of far. I mean, I've got a 2016 MacBook Pro, but it's not all Macs. It's got to have the LE, and you have to be running Mojave. But I've just been really happy with it. I mean, I've only been using it for about a week now, but it's made the difference between deciding just to plug in an old set of headphones into the 3.5 millimeter jack versus using my AirPods, which are sitting there. But I know in the past, I knew that if I tried them, they probably would get hung up trying to connect. And it was just a lot easier to plug in my H6 headphones. But now I've been using the AirPods a lot more.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me that Apple, they didn't make this kind of tool for the Mac or this kind of integration. And it's so sad whenever I see. So Sylvia does this a lot. She switches the connection of the AirPods manually from iOS to the Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And she needs to deal with those sad menus on iOS for Bluetooth and that kind of stuff. on the Mac, sorry, for Bluetooth and all of that. And it's so much more intuitive on iOS, where you just bring it closer and you get the dialogue. And I assume that this kind of integration will be done by Apple eventually, and so this utility will be rendered useless by Apple in some near or distant future. But right now, if you want that kind of experience, this is your best option. And there are other utilities like this, but this is the more visual and Apple-like that I've seen, basically because it uses the private Apple APIs that do this kind of stuff on iOS. Right. So really well done. Yeah. And the pricing model is also interesting, that you can choose how much you pay with the suggested price of $5. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And I also should mention that there's a Today widget. I don't use the notification center on the Mac that often, but if there's a little bit more going on in the Today widget for AirBuddy, because when you open up that panel, you'll see not only your AirPods in the case, but you'll see the battery status for the Mac that you're using, plus any iOS devices that have been previously connected to that Mac. You have to actually have, I think by Bluetooth, you have to have done that in the past. And so that That actually was handier than I realized because, for instance, I'm sitting in my basement office and I was working and I went and looked and I saw, my 9.7-inch iPad that's sitting up in my bedroom on the second floor is really low. If I want to read a book tonight before I go to bed, I got to go upstairs at some point and plug that in.
I need to install this on my Mac Mini. I keep forgetting because my AirPods are somewhere in my house. So I will find them and I will try this out.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Paste. Paste is a smart cloud clipboard, history, and snippets manager for the Mac and iOS. The app automatically stores everything you copy across all your devices and keeps your clipboard history organized. An intuitive UI tightly integrates with both operating systems and your workflow. Paste takes the system clipboard and extends it, adding an unlimited capacity. It includes intelligent search too. You can search the content that you copied, the type of content, and even the application you copied from. Even better, all of the data is securely synced via iCloud across all your devices running Paste. I want to tell you a little bit about a really handy and unique feature of Paste called pinboards. They help you organize your clipboard history by letting you pin snippets you use regularly across all of your devices so that you have access to them instantly. There are a ton of other useful features too. You can exclude applications that have sensitive information in them so they won't be tracked by Paste. Password managers are automatically excluded by default, but you can also exclude things like apps that track your finances. You can also select and paste multiple items simultaneously and drag and drop them into an application. One of my absolute favorite features is the ability to remove formatting from copied text and paste any content as plain text. This is great whenever you're copying styled text, either from the web or from a rich text editor, and it's something that the system clipboard just can't do. You can also get large previews of any type of snippet in your clipboard history or pinboard. And if there's something you want to share with a friend, you can use AirDrop to send it to them too. Paste is a crazy powerful cloud clipboard time machine for your Mac and iOS. Use the link in the show notes today to get 30% off Paste when you use the coupon code AppStories at checkout from now until February 11th. Again, the link is in the show notes, and if you use the coupon code AppStories, you'll get 30% off Paste when purchased directly from the website. Thanks again to Paste for supporting the show.
So my first pick is something that came out last week, and it's an iOS app. It's for the iPhone and iPad. It's a very niche utility. It's for programmers and tinkerers who are playing with shortcuts, basically. The name is JSON. It's a very clever pun in that it's not. It sounds like Jason, the person's name, but it's also JSON, the format, the JavaScript object notation, something. And it's a utility by Simon Stovering, is the developer of Scriptable for iOS, the JavaScript IDE that we talked about last year. We selected as part of the MacStories Selects as one of the runner-ups for Best New App of the Year. And JSON is a utility to view and navigate JSON files. But not just JSON files that you manually pick from the this app uses the iOS Files document browser, so native API. We mentioned on App Stories before how we like the native files integration and the document browser. It's one of the trends that we selected as our themes for apps going forward, and JSON uses the document browser. But in addition to files, you can also open any JSON content from the system clipboard into JSON, and you can choose to save it as a file at that point or just open it. And there's a couple of things that I want to highlight here. As I said, this is a very niche utility, so unless you are a developer dealing with API responses, JSON is a very common format for when you have a REST API or a web API that returns some data. It's usually provided either in XML, but nobody wants to deal with XML because it's ugly and unreadable, or JSON, which is much more structured and clean.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a dictionary, right? If you think of a dictionary, because you'll get back information from an API and there'll be a key, as they call it, and a value. So the pairs of information, and it can be nested. It can be, for instance, the iTunes Search API, if you search for a song, you'll get all sorts of information. It'll be the name of the song, the artist, the album, the price, the URL, the artwork, all these things, and there'll be pairs of keys, which are the kind of like the variable, like artwork, and then there'll be the URL for the artwork, which will be the value, and that's kind of how it works. But when you get it back in its raw format, it's readable, but it's not easy to read, especially if there's a lot of sub-nested items within whatever's returned, right?
Yeah, it's easier to read than XML because XML is basically a superset of HTML, and therefore that includes encoding characters and like angle major and minus signs. It's all very ugly.
Right. It's like HTML tags on steroids, kind of. It's really messy.
JSON is, as you said, it's at the very high level. It's a key value pair, and those can be nested within each other. So you can have arrays within a key value pair and that kind of stuff. Anyway, there are two things that I want to highlight that kind of make JSON unique. First is how you navigate your JSON files. The app uses this visual presentation that allows you to tap on any key or value or object that contains other items to navigate like you would navigate in a file manager. There's a path at the top of the toolbar that is like, it's called a breadcrumb navigation. So you have these multiple locations and you can tap on them to instantly go back to a specific point in navigation. And the JSON that is usually provided as a plain text becomes this visual hierarchy that you can browse and tap, and you can expand, and you can drill into, for example, an array. And then when you find the value, you can select it, you can copy it. There are gestures to instantly copy the text of a key or of a value. It's really well done. And at any point, you can switch from this visual mode to the plain text mode, and JSON then becomes the standard syntax highlighted JSON code. But what makes JSON really unique is, and the navigation inside the app really unique, is how you can open multiple tabs, which is standard for any file manager or web browser at this point. So you can switch between tabs and you can rearrange tabs. But also, and this is my favorite touch, how within the same tab, you can create splits, which is basically a split view for the current JSON file or JSON content that you're viewing.
No, that's interesting.
So the splits are, depending on your size class of the screen that you're using, they can be horizontal. So on the iPad Pro, in full screen mode, you have horizontal splits. In compact mode or on the iPhone, you have vertical splits. And each split can have its own view. So it can be visual view or plain text view. And each split can navigate to a different point of the JSON. So you can do things, for example, at the root view of the JSON file, have one split showing you the visual presentation and the other split showing you the plain text. Or you can do in one split, show the root view, in another split, show a nested view, and in the third split, show the last item in the hierarchy of the JSON.
Wow.
And of course, you can have multiple splits per tab. So you can go wild with, if you have really long JSON files or JSON responses from web APIs, you have a lot of freedom here.
Yeah, I really wish back in the day when I was developing Blink that I had this, because, you know, the iTunes Search API returns a lot of data, and it was always, I was using like web apps and things, which there are some pretty good ones, but being able to do those split views would have been just saved me a lot of time just figuring out exactly how that JSON worked.
Yeah. And the second aspect that makes the app really stand out is the adoption of modern iOS technologies. So besides the Files document browser, JSON uses Siri shortcuts, the clipboard, and rich notifications together to provide something so unique that I've never seen it done by anyone else this way. It's meant to be used, this technique is meant to be used with the Shortcuts app. So if you're creating a shortcut in the Shortcuts app and you're dealing with some JSON content, whether it comes from a JSON file or the API response of a web service, you can copy the JSON to the clipboard, and then you can drag in a native app shortcut provided by JSON to iOS. So you can search in the Shortcuts library for JSON, and you will see view JSON in notification. So what you do is you You use whatever means you're using to generate or fetch or get the JSON content.
Right.
You copy it to the clipboard, and then you pass the clipboard to the view JSON in notification. What happens now is, as soon as Shortcuts generates this JSON code, you will get a notification pop up on your iPhone or iPad. You drag down the notification to expand it, and that notification will transform itself into a mini JSON, the app, into a mini JSON view, where thanks to changes to rich notifications in iOS 12, you're able to replicate the same experience of the app. So you can navigate the visual structure of the JSON and select text even from the notification itself. You cannot create splits because, of course, the space is constrained. You cannot switch to text mode, I think, but you can fully navigate the entire JSON structure visually from the notification. You can tap around, you can go into nested levels, you can go back. There's breadcrumbs in the toolbar of the notification. It's wild. It even respects the theme that you set in the app, whether it's light or dark. And then you have actions. You can say, well, continue by opening this JSON in the main app, or open the app, but also save a file for this JSON. It's amazing what the developer Simon Stovring has done with this combination of shortcuts and rich notifications in iOS 12. It really, even though, and this is a point that I made in my review, even though it's a niche utility, it really shows how an indie developer by himself can push the envelope on iOS for what is possible if you adopt modern APIs. And so you have this app that, I mean, arguably few people will use compared to something like, I don't know, Tweetbot. It will have a smaller user base than Tweetbot. But JSON is superior to more popular apps in that when you consider modern iOS, this app takes advantage of all the APIs that iOS has to offer. You have files, you have keyboard shortcuts, you have customizable app icons, you have tabs and splits, which maybe Apple will implement in iOS 13. You have integration with the clipboard, customizable Siri shortcuts in addition to the default ones, integration with the Shortcuts app, and rich notifications based on the notification changes in iOS 12. Technically speaking, even if you don't know JSON or don't need to program JSON, it's a remarkable release for a 1.0.
It really is. And when you think about it, it really is almost like the first third-party plugin for shortcuts that's ever been created, right? Because he is so tightly tied with those notifications, his tool in with the Shortcuts app, that it's making the creation of shortcuts that much easier.
Yeah, it's in the settings of the shortcuts, it says it's ideal for the Shortcuts app when you create these little steps. So yeah, the app is a free download, and there's a $2 in-app purchase to unlock icons, themes, and more than 2 tabs at once. Super recommended, especially if you want to create shortcuts based on web APIs.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Linode. With Linode, you'll have access to a suite of powerful hosting options with prices starting at just $5 a month. And you'll be up and running with your own virtual server in the Linode cloud in under a minute. It doesn't matter if you're working on your very first server or deploying a complex system. Linode are the folks to talk to. They offer the fastest hardware and network with outstanding customer support if you ever need help. It's super easy to launch a Linode cloud server. And their block storage is available all over the place. It's in Newark, Fremont, Dallas, Atlanta, Frankfurt, London, and Singapore. And you know what? Soon it'll be in Tokyo, Japan, too. Version 4 of Linode's RESTful API is out in beta now, and it includes an officially supported Python CLI. Oh, and guess what? Linode is hiring right now. If you want to learn more and check out what they're looking for, just go to linode.com/careers. I know I've said it before, but you know what? It bears repeating. We use Linode at Mac Stories. We have custom Slack bots that let us do things like track the status of app updates and articles that we've assigned to our writers. Linode is great for that sort of thing. Okay, so Linode has fantastic pricing options available too. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month, and they offer high memory plans starting with 16 gigabytes of RAM. As a listener of this show, you can sign up at linode.com/appstories, and you'll not only be supporting this show, but you'll get $20 towards a Linode plan. That's a great deal. On the 1 gigabyte of RAM plan, that's like 4 months free. And with a 7-day money-back guarantee, there's nothing to lose. So Go to linode.com/appstories right away to learn more, sign up, and take advantage of that $20 credit. Or use the promo code AppStories2019 at checkout. Thanks so much to Linode for supporting the show. All right, Federico, for my second one, I'm going to switch on over to iOS and talk a little bit about an app that we've covered on Mac Stories before and on the club. It's Text Case from Chris Hanna. And I really love this. I really love this app. It started its life as just such a simple little utility, and Chris has just kind of refined it and added functionality over time to the point where I love it. I mean, I know when I first saw it, I could see the potential that it had. And one of the first things I did was contact him and said, could you add the Chicago Manual of Style? Because that's what we do for our headlines on Mac Stories. They're formatted, and the title casing is done according to the Chicago Manual of Style. And the original version didn't have that, and he added that, and he added a bunch of other style manuals. But it's not just like an app for writers, because you can do all sorts of text transformations with this utility. You can take out HTML tags. You can URL encode something. You can decode something. You can make it all caps. You can make it all initial caps. You can do lowercase. There's a whole bunch of different ones here. And it's very customizable too. If you go into the settings, you can turn off the ones that you don't use. You can rearrange the order, which I find super fantastic and a great way to use it. And it works both with the clipboard. So when you open the app, it'll, you can just use the clipboard text that you may have copied somewhere else, or you can type right into its view, and below where you type into the text field, you'll see all the representations of the different transformations that you have activated in the app, which is really cool. But beyond that, there is Siri integration, so you can actually use title case in custom shortcuts, which opens up a lot of possibilities for writers to do things like check headlines before they publish. I mean, I think you do something along those lines, don't you, Federico?
Yeah, I use shortcuts from Text Case as part of my longer shortcut to publish to WordPress. So what I do is I added the Text Case app shortcut that gets the text from the clipboard and transforms it to the Chicago Manual of Style capitalization for text. And I added this step to a shortcut that I shared years ago to get the markdown of the current document, remove the title, and make it ready for Mac Stories. Now Text Case is a function of that shortcut, so that when I share my document, the shortcut extracts the title, removes it from the text that goes on Mac Stories. Otherwise, I would have a title twice on the site,
right,
and basically passes the title to Text Case, and Text Case, of course, transforms the text, puts it back into the clipboard, and then I display the new contents of the clipboard in a dialog, in an alert, just to confirm that the capitalization has gone right. Sometimes it gets some things worse, some things wrong, like some product names, or if there's like a lowercase I after a colon. So the alert serves as a way for me to fix it manually, but 90% of the time it's perfect. So I save a lot of time. I used to use web APIs to do this. I used to do this manually years ago, which was a nightmare. So to have this kind of utility baked into a shortcut as a native step saved me so much time. I couldn't imagine going back to the old ways.
Yeah, it's a fantastic little app. And all right, well, I think we have time for one more. Why don't you hit me with one more of your apps, Federico?
All right, so I want to pick, let me see. I want to pick this new utility that I've been playing with. It's called Yonks. I think that's British for something. I think I think it means a long time ago or something.
All right, I'm of no help to you here.
Hold on, it says so in the settings of the app. Well, it did say that somewhere. Okay. Oh yeah, on Twitter at Yonks app.
All right.
Let me see the bio of the app. Yonks, which is a funny name, British slang for a long time. So there you go. Anyway,
all right.
This is an iPhone utility to track past or upcoming events. So how much time has passed, or how many days or weeks or months or years are left until something occurs. So it's a countdown type of utility, but also a way to see, for example, how long ago you quit smoking, or how long has passed since the last, I don't know, space shuttle launch. That might be years. I have no idea. I use it to track upcoming video game and music releases. So right now, my Yonks app has a list of Wargroove, which is a Nintendo Switch strategy game that came out today.
Mm-hmm.
The Grammys, which are at the moment of recording the show, are in 9 days. Yoshi's Crafted World for the Nintendo Switch. Final Fantasy XII, also for the Nintendo Switch. And the new Billie Eilish album, which is coming out sometime in March. So there are many apps like Yonks on the App Store. This is not a new idea. What makes it unique and what makes me appreciate it is the design. It's very colorful, very simple. And each item that you want to track can have a custom color and a custom emoji. And the emojis are big and colorful and large. And it really makes you appreciate the design work that went into emoji. When you create an item, you can choose to, you can customize the unit that you want to track. So like, do you want to track minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years? You can choose the emoji, you can choose the color, and you can set the date. Then you can also set notes in addition to a name for the item, and you can also add milestones. So for example, you can add a milestone for when 100 days are left, or when 2 months are left, or when 1 week is left. Now, each item and each optional milestone can be added to the calendar, to the system calendar. Right now, there's a bug in that if you try to switch the default calendar where items are added to, the app will crash. But I personally pinged the developer on Twitter, and they are working on a fix. Each item can be previewed in a card that is very colorful, has the same background color that you set for the main item. And that's about it. When you tap the plus button, you can either add counters manually, or you can take a look at the gallery. The gallery contains suggestions like Christmas Day, or the US elections 2020, or the Super Bowl, or the next FIFA World Cup and stuff like that. There's also some old events that folks like Steven will appreciate. So by default, when you track upcoming events, they have a little label that says until. If you track past events, the label says since, and it points backwards. So by default, under the technology section for past events, you have the release of the Apple I, the release of the Macintosh 35 years ago, and the release of the first iPhone 138 months ago. So that's a funny unit of measurement. But yeah, it's colorful, it's funny, it's a great use of colors and emoji, and I'm looking forward to the fix for the calendar, because I also have a calendar for game releases and music releases, of course.
I know you do, and this looks really neat. You've been holding out on me. I was not aware you were using this. This looks like kind of a fun app. I was going to ask you, and I think I know the answer, but you're not using this to do things like 6 days until my iPad diaries story is due, or something like that.
Why would it
seems to me like that would be super stressful.
No, I already have my task manager for that. I don't need.
All right.
This is just for fun stuff.
Good. It seems like a really good use for that. I wouldn't want to use it for that kind of stressful work stuff. All right, Federico, I think that's a good place to stop. I know we wanted to do a couple of more each, but we're going to revisit this topic because
we like to talk. That's what we do.
This is like a category that is right at the sweet spot of app stories, and some of our favorite apps are in this kind of, single use, super handy, not super well known, indie, iOS, Mac type of app category, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
Thanks again to our two sponsors for this episode, Paste and Linode. And you can find me and Federico, of course, over on MacStories.net and at Club Mac Stories. And Federico is over on Twitter. He's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHN VOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.